welcome to the February 11th, 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And we can have roll call, please.
Messina.
Here.
McCracken.
Here.
Fleming.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
Lutrip.
Here.
Ingalls. Coppice.
Thank you. If you can join me with the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can you hear me out there? Okay. Approval of the December 10th Planning and Zoning Commission meetings for the workshop we had.
So move.
I have a motion by Fleming.
Second.
I have a second by McCracken. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. This time, public comment, and that's anything that isn't on our agenda. So if anyone's out there that wants to come up to the podium and talk to us, if not, okay. Staff comment?
All right, good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
I wanted to announce that Mike Barry, who's an associate planner in the planning department, will be retiring next Wednesday after 9.5 years of service with the city. So we're sad to see him go, so I wanted to share that information. For our March meeting, we actually just have one public hearing item. It is associated with the Coeur project. They are seeking a small zone change request. There's a portion on the northwest property, so away from all the residential areas where they want to change the zoning, and then also change the zoning of the well sites. They've worked with the city's water department to figure out an appropriate location for the well. So we need to change the zoning for that, and then there's an amendment being proposed to the development agreement. So that'll all come to you in one public hearing item in March. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Commission comments? Oh, okay. We're going to go right into our public hearing. The applicant is Aaron Moat. Location is 213 East Harrison Avenue. The request is a proposed zone change from C17 PUD to a C17. And Sean's going to give us an update.
All right. Thank you, Chair Messina.
Good evening.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Tonight, as alluded to, we have a zone change request, ZC 125. So this is a request for 213 East Harrison. The request is for C17 PUD to C17. The applicant is here this evening and will be able to answer questions. So the location is the northwest corner of East Harrison and 2nd Street. And all of the legal notice was provided. It was mailed on January 24th, published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on the 25th, and the property was posted on the 31st. So we'll begin with site context. This is a picture of the site. It is outlined in this white dashed line of the subject property here. And here's Harrison and 2nd as it jogs. So, to begin, it's good to go back and speak a little bit about the past actions, and I know this is a very text-heavy slide. I'll try not to read it into the record, but suffice it to say, about 45 years ago, there was a request for a PUD. I can give a little bit more information on that. Planning Commission, they reviewed it on February 12th of 1980. And City Council reviewed it on March 4th and April 1st. So it was continued on March 4th. They had sent it forward to have some transportation review done to decide if it was possible or if there was any interest in making the street into a one-way. And it was determined that it would not be. And so they reconvened on April 1st and approved it with conditions. There were 3 conditions. One was the specific limitation on the use in the site layout. It was restricted to insurance/real estate office only. It had to maintain its residential character, and they were required to install 8-foot sidewalks. None of that really happened, so it's been living ever since then as a PUD. As you can see here on my slide, initially that was zoned C-1AL-PUD, which doesn't align really directly with our current zoning. That was changed, I believe, in 1983, when that transferred to what it is today, which is the C-17 PUD, but all of the requirements and conditions are still attached to the property. The reason why our best guess is there wasn't much information on this, but during that time there was a moratorium for, because of wastewater, the plant wasn't able to handle the capacity at that time, so there was a moratorium on development. So there's a couple of small PUDs around town during that time that didn't meet the 1.5 acre requirement, and that was, as I understood, the way that the city handled it at that time, so that certain things could move forward and other things could not. So the applicant's narrative and zoning implications. So the applicant has identified that he would like to use it as professional management office within the existing residential structure, and then build a caretaker's unit on the property with additional space on the ground floor to provide some window displays. I'm not sure if the applicant is too aware of this, but the caretaker's unit is a residential style unit. It's accessory to, so it doesn't have a commercial use associated with it. It requires separations and things of that nature, so he'll have to find a better way to do the display. But what that falls under the zoning code for the type of use is a service activity as general construction services. And here is the description of what that is, as well as the definition of what a caretaker's unit is for everyone. And we'll move on. So there are 4 findings that are required for any zone change. We'll move through those right now. And finding B1 is that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. So this is the context of the entire city and the location of where that is in the city. And this is the future land use map at the neighborhood scale, and you can see here that is listed as compact neighborhood. Suffice it to say, and I made a note in the staff report that talks about this, is because of the limitation of that PUD at the time, and the comp plan, you know, there's 23,000 plus or minus parcels in the city of Coeur d'Alene. So when we did the comp plan, we did our best to try and use the land use that existed, as well as what we wanted the future land uses, with council input on, you know, protect the single family neighborhoods. And so some of those things didn't align perfectly. So we gave the applicant the opportunity to make the request for CV-17 if he wanted to do that, which he decided to, with the understanding that Planning Commission makes the recommendation to council, and council ultimately makes the call. So this is a description of what place types and what they represent, and this is also in the comprehensive plan. And then the description of what a compact neighborhood is. And there are places of medium-density residential areas located primarily in older locations of Coeur d'Alene where there's an established street grid with bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Development is typically single-family, duplex, triplex, fourplex townhomes, green courts, and auto courts. Supporting uses typically include neighborhood parks, recreation facilities, and parking areas. The compatible zoning associated with compact neighborhood is R12, R17, MH8, NC, and CC. So this is the transportation element of the comprehensive plan, denoting where that is. The first one is the bicycle network. There is bicycle lanes along Harrison. And then there is sidewalks somewhat sporadically around there. There is on the subject property east-west on Harrison, but not north-south on 2nd Street. And then the existing transit network, which is CityLink, and it kind of lives inside of this portion, Route A. All right, so moving on to the goals and objectives. There's different sets of goals and objectives. The first category of that is the community and identity. So the goal is that citizens are well-informed, responsive, and involved in community discussions. I always like to thank the people that came out tonight and are willing to listen, give their testimony, and weigh in on requests such as this. And goal 2, to maintain a high quality of life for residents and businesses that make Coeur d'Alene a great place to live and visit. So growth and development, there's some additional ones here. I'll just read the goals as you can check out the objectives, is to develop a mix of land uses throughout the city that balance housing and employment while preserving the qualities that make Coeur d'Alene a great place to live. And goal 2, which is to ensure appropriate high-quality infrastructure to accommodate community needs and future growth. Last but not least, the section of jobs and economy is to retain, grow, and attract businesses. Right, so moving on to the next finding, which is B2, that public facilities and utilities are or are not available and adequate for the proposed use. Suffice it to say that we had streets and engineering, water, fire, and the wastewater department weigh in on this request. All have reviewed it, and the public utilities and facilities are available to serve the proposed zone change request. Next is finding B3, is that the physical characteristics of the site do or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. So let me move forward here, because everybody can read. Is the immediate area is characterized by a mix of small scale residential and commercial development on a relatively flat elevation. The parcel itself sits at the northwest corner of Harrison Avenue and 2nd Street and is approximately 9,411 square feet in size. The structure on the property is a mid-20th century house, retaining most of its original residential architectural style, and the site features a sidewalk along Harrison and a paved driveway along 2nd Street, and with minimal landscaping on the frontages and mature trees in the northwest corner of the lot. Those trees are back here. So moving on to the pictures here. This is the front of the home along Harrison. This is Harrison here. So front of home, this is the kind of side or rear, depending on if you're on 2nd looking at it or not. This is the intersection of 2nd and Harrison along the side. And then this is from 2nd, looking southwest towards the home. And then looking down Harrison directly so you can see the sidewalk that is installed here. And then this red arrow is pointing to the St. Vincent de Paul Help Center. And then doing a 180 and looking towards 3rd and 4th Street. This is the mix of residential, commercial, and civic uses that are off in the distance. Right, so last but not least is finding B4, is that the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and or existing land uses. Excuse me. So we had the city engineer, Chris Bosley, weighed in on this using land use code based upon what the applicant has said he would like to do with the property. And it suffices to say that it would generate about 18 additional trips per day with 2 additional AM peak hour and 2 additional PM peak hour trips, including the caretaker's unit. So the neighborhood character, and it's very similar to the physical characteristics. I won't read this all into the record, but suffice it to say that Harrison is kind of the east-west route. 3rd, 4th, and Government Way all lead to the freeway, as well as very close to downtown. So it's kind of a good east-west movement area for the city, vehicular-wise. All right, so this is the existing zoning map. You can see here that this is the subject property. It is C17 PUD with C17 next door, R12 to the north and to the east, and then C17L on the other side of that to the south, R12, and a smaller C17 PUD here on the corner. So the proposed C17 zoning district, this is what the definition of C17 is. It allows for a broad range of commercial uses, as well as a density of R17 for residential, Those can be mixed, and the determination for density is based on the size of the lot for residential. And so, this district should be located adjacent to arterials, however, joint access developments are encouraged. So, another very text-heavy slide. I will not read all of these in here. I put this in here to show what the uses are of C-17. There is a note in here that talks about the theoretical maximums of the buffer yard requirements, as well as some of the limitations that are based on size of lot, the parking, setbacks, heights, those sorts of things that limit development based on what the size of the lot is. Right, so the land use map here, so you can see currently that's a single-family home. Next door is a civic use. Lots of single families, duplexes nearby with commercial flanking on the north-south arterials. And this was more towards the beginning of my staff report. I put it towards the end because it went along with the zoning and the land use, is prior zone changes in the vicinity and what those were. And so the way that this works is ZC stands for zone change. The second number is which number it was in the year, which is the last two digits. So from 1987 to 2018, these were the requests. Green denotes ones that are approved. The blue is the one that was withdrawn, and then red is denied. So the Planning Commission will need to consider this request, make appropriate findings to recommend to City Council to adopt the C-17 zoning or not to adopt the C-17 zoning. So with that ends my staff report. I will be willing to answer any questions.
Sean? Sean, I got a quick question.
Sure.
Besides C-17, which is being requested, we have a piece of paper in front of us, neighborhood commercial. Would that use that they want to do as far as an office, I'm assuming, according to what information we have in our package, and then a caretaker's unit, which is basically a accessory ADU, would they be able to put a accessory use similar to that? Because I see here under accessory uses under neighborhood commercial, it's an apartment for residential caretaker. So I'm trying to find out what other zoning application might work without blanketing a C-17.
Yes, and there's a few different ways, a good question, and there's a few different ways to accomplish something similar to what he's requesting. So NC and CC are somewhat similar. The scope and size of the building that you can build is a little bit different, but there's hours of operation. It's done by floor area ratio, so the size of the lot determines how much you can build on there. There are some limitations to use, and so when I put this up here, it's not real clear in the NC and CC if the general description of service activities that general construction services would be allowed. It talks about retail, very limited retail and service uses. So I would assume that would be able to fall under there. One of the limitations, though, is that the caretaker's unit or a living unit would have to be on top or below grade. It cannot be at the ground level elevation.
So it would have to be on top or below of one of the general construction service buildings, let's say, or another building that's there. Because I believe I read that it was going to build maybe, and the applicant can answer this, 2 buildings or something, I believe.
Yes, from
So I can ask
my
the
understanding, reading his request and his narrative, is that he wanted to convert the existing single-family home into kind of the office space where things are done, build the caretaker's unit, and have a little bit of like showroom there. But like I said, that probably won't work. The showroom needs to be where the commercial use is at in that building.
So when you look at the same 2, and then you have specifically prohibited industrial warehouses and outdoor storage of goods, I mean, then they aren't really compatible, right?
Well, The general description here of service activities
Yeah.
is the services. So
Okay.
the way that the city code works is that you have these categories of use. So you have a commercial category,
Okay.
which is like a retail, that sort of thing. Service category is more of like something that you would do repeatedly for someone, like their
Yeah.
taxes or haircuts or, those types
Right.
of services. This falls under a service activity, so as I understand it, it would allow. The other avenue, getting back to Chairman Messina's original request, the other avenue would be a zone change to C17L, which is a very limited commercial that does allow for office space, but it doesn't allow for the general construction services, which would require a special use permit as well. So that's a whole nother step, taking another trip back to Planning Commission.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sean, if I could ask, on the applications, you listed right at the very end, all these different zoning actions since 1987, were they all on this property?
Oh, no, that's the map here. Are you speaking of this one?
Right to the right there, your listing of the different zoning actions,
Yeah, so this is the subject property,
right?
and then it's kind of hard to see. Maybe I can get this a little bit bigger.
That's
But the
okay.
corresponding zone changes, like ZC 587,
Got it, thank you.
is here.
Second thing is, to the south and across Harrison, from the subject property and a bit to the west, is another C-17 PUD. It looks from the property, because I used to live in the area, like it's an old facility, looks like petroleum fueling or something going on there. I assume that's been there for years and years?
Correct. I couldn't find much information on it.
Okay.
Really, none.
I have one other question. You have to
Sure,
forgive me, I'm from the south, I'm real slow, okay?
take your time.
The C-17 PUD, why can he not do what he wants to do under the current zoning?
Because it's not specifically selling insurance or real estate. So the PUD really, really locked it down due to that wastewater moratorium.
So
the
when going
building
back to the
moratorium.
the 1980 resolution, it said for those uses and keep the building, right?
Correct. It was that specific use, keep the building residential, build a parking lot and
Okay,
sidewalks.
thank you very much.
Can we do that again, though? I mean, we're not used to a C-17 PUD, but could we modify the current
You modify the PUD.
restrictive? Yes.
Yeah, staff
Expand
talked
that.
about that, amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
And we looked at it and it was such a strange action
Right.
that we didn't feel comfortable with modifying a PUD that wasn't an acre and a half because it doesn't meet the minimums that the city, it was almost like a stopgap that was used back then. And so we felt that it would be much better to bring forward the request to Planning Commission and Council and have them decide, is it worth it to have the zone change at whatever the applicants sought?
So if we wanted to do, or not want to do, but if the applicant would want to do a C-17 PUD based on what he wants to use the property for, he'd have to come back and do an application again and,
Well, he wouldn't meet the criteria for a new PUD because the code has changed, so you'd have to have an acre and a half. So we'd either have to have one of these zoning districts, or there's the conditional zoning option. In the zoning code, we've only done that a few times. Those are a little challenging because then it's like à la carte, and then it's hard for staff to manage over time when there's certain uses that are restricted or allowed on specific properties, but that's the other option.
so can we can't restrict the property, because we're looking at a zone change right now. We can't restrict the property just for what the applicant would want, so we wouldn't have a broad C-17 zone in that area.
Yeah, that's what Hillary was alluding to here with the conditional rezoning. This happens from time to time. Staff is a little bit wary of it because it becomes very hard to manage over time. It ends up being similar to what we have now.
Right.
If you take a look at the way that the city's zoning district, our information sheets, these are our our typical zones. And so when someone comes to us and sits down across from us and says, what can I do with my property? And we look up the zoning and say R12, here's what you can do in R12. The more times that you put these conditional zones on there, the more staff has to go and try and find which specific parcels that applies to and give them that information. It becomes quite the task over time,
And
don't
we'd
want
be
things to fall through the cracks.
opening a new can of worms perhaps because of giving a new
And we're not
zoning,
saying it can't
or-
be done, it can be. We just
Yeah.
caution that to become the norm.
Okay, Peter, go ahead.
Could you do a development agreement?
You can, it's a very small piece of property,
Does it make any
usually.
difference? I mean,
You can.
what I've, it's surrounded, on both sides is C-17. One is a C-17 straight through, the other one is a C-17L. And so here, this property's right in between, and he or she, they want to go to C-17. C-17L wouldn't meet their needs, apparently.
Not without a special use permit.
Okay. Then further to the west, that big red dot, is that C-17? And below that is C-17? I mean, there's a lot of C-17s in here, I think.
This way? Yeah, there's a lot of C-17 over here.
I mean, and this, yeah. From just viewing it like this, it just seems like a natural progression. If you can't do a PUD modification, you can't do a management agreement or development agreement. It seems like the C-17 would be proper. But having not heard his comments or public comments, I reserve that comment, making a determination. I have not.
Are there any details of the plans for parking, and where they would come onto the lot? Like, would they enter off of Second or Harrison? Because like peak times of day, I think the traffic at the light is backed up past that parcel a lot of times.
So I gave Hillary a glance because we were discussing this with the city engineer today and how they would access the site. Back, when this was originally done 45 years ago, there was a lot of comments about, is Second, that residential street that shouldn't have commercial traffic on it or not? And, is it going to booger up Harrison by approving this? And so Chris said that he would rather have the access from the existing point of access on the site, which is on Second Street, rather than having the traffic stop to wait to turn into a parking lot off of Harrison. However, he said if Planning Commission wants it the other way, he would be happy to do either.
Okay.
Sean, what is the C-17 to the west of the property? If you can go back to your screen that you had all the zone changes, when was that changed to C-17, or was it always C-17?
That's the
It
help.
appears it was
It's the
annexed in
former
that way.
library.
It's the library.
It's been that way for many a year.
Okay.
It was a library before that.
Correct.
Oh, that's where the library was.
Yeah, that's the concrete library
Oh,
building.
okay, okay,
Try to demo that.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions of Sean? No? All right, thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
Okay. We have the applicant come on up.
Is there any specific slide you'd like me to put on? Maybe that one? Sure. All right.
Aaron, just state your name and the city you live in, and I'll swear you in.
Sure. Aaron Moat, I live here in Coeur d'Alene.
Do you solemnly swear and/or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Absolutely.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you for having me here tonight. Just want to clear up a couple things. After the discussions, becoming more aware with what the proper uses of the proposed building that I put on the property, we would only be using it as an accessory caretaking unit. There will be no business operations taken care in the accessory caretaker's unit. That is very necessary for that property because of the help center next door. I love St. Vincent de Paul. In fact, I donated $35,000 to St. Vincent de Paul this year. But there is a serious problem with having vagrancy in that area due to the nature of what they do there. We've had people sleeping on that back fence line before. I lived in that property when I first moved here, moving my business up here into Coeur d'Alene, expanding from Boise. So love being up here. I enjoyed living there. I looked to make it a rental property, but I don't think that's the best use. I think the best use is a small business or professional management office with a caretaker's unit to properly oversee the property so that the security is there. We've had beer bottles thrown into the property. I had 3 kids living there. That's not an appropriate environment for that to be happening. So due to that, I think this is a great use for the property. I think I've provided a plan for adequate parking in front of the accessory caretaking unit. I think I could fit 3 or 4 vehicles in front of that, another 3 or 4 vehicles inside the bottom of the accessory caretaking unit if I ever wanted to store vehicles on it, but I don't see that being something I would be seeking to do. So we'd have 2 parking places on the right side of the building for the professional management office. There's only 2 offices in that structure, so adequate parking will be provided. Happy to provide any other questions, but certainly think, it's been pretty well thought out. When I presented this to the city, I was excited about the opportunity to create a nice wide, sidewalk. I think that's a problem there. Also, I would like to see, a blinking crosswalk there because, the amount of traffic that goes by at 35 plus miles an hour on a 25 mile an hour road would blow your mind. I mean, we have 35 mile an hour all day long. I bet 45 mile an hour more than once a day. So I brought those concerns. I offered to pay for that also. So, I'd be interested in knowing what the cost would be and to front that cost. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to improving our city. I'm a business owner. I started my business actually right when COVID started, moved it out of Colorado, came back to Idaho. Very grateful to be here. But yeah, this is definitely a plan to try and make this the best use. And I'm, putting my mind to it and think I came out with a good use. So happy to answer any questions at this time.
Hillary, I got a question. As far as the application for whatever structures, they're going to have to adhere to all the parking regulations and the amount of spaces and
Correct, yep. Everything would be
everything that
vetted
goes with the
the
regular permit.
zoning code, correct.
Okay. Questions? Go ahead, Phil.
Thank you for being here. If I could ask,
Sure, absolutely.
in your application, you indicate there will be 2 businesses there.
Nope, just one business. So I don't know why that was actually misrepresented.
And it goes on to say you intend to use the existing building for that use.
Yes, sir.
And then add a separate caretaker's quarters? Are
Yes.
they being combined into one building, or how is that going to be done?
Yeah, so into the back, so if we were to look at the property,
Right.
Oh, Richard, sir,
Yeah, we're going to have
I
to,
got-
we
I
can't,
got it- I have
sorry.
it right up here. I have it right here on the screen.
You can use the mouse up there.
yeah, I see. Thank you so much. So we would be looking to put the accessory unit as far back in this left corner as possible to provide as much parking up here and an access in and out right here was the ideal plan. If we had to take out this garage to provide access, that is possible. But I personally don't think it would be the best, if we're just having a caretaker in and out a couple times a day, I just don't see the amount of traffic flow presenting an issue from that exit.
Can I ask you a little clarification on the business? What kind of traffic does people coming there? Is there a lot of that, or is it strictly
So I
on
own-
the phone or whatever?
Yeah, I own direct siding, so I do mostly in-home consultations right now. So this will be our physical, really just like a design meeting place. We actually, in 3 or 4 years, hope to have a place in a very, what I would say like a big, truck yard. We're not that big right now. Like I have a couple trailers there. Those will be moved as soon as this starts. If we can get approved and get. When I hired an architect to start this project a year and a half ago, he thought the plan that he made and I spent some money on was good to go. So we were a little surprised when this PUD came up and I heard from the city that we couldn't move forward. So we've been kind of stuck in a situation where I haven't been able to do anything because we just didn't know what we could do and how to handle it. So we're here now and certainly trying to just get the ball moving.
Your idea is to convert the existing residence to an office use, build a caretaker's facility in the back closer to St. Vincent de Paul.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And you would have your parking and access in the area between the existing building and St. Vincent de Paul? Should be
Yeah.
coming off of, okay, all right, thank you.
More additional parking.
I guess I have a question on the use a little bit. As far as like siding materials and things like that, they're not on site.
Nothing. There will be maybe one company vehicle parked there, but there will
Okay.
be nothing else. No trailers, no nothing. I mean, we're not even, those will be gone as soon as the development starts, period.
Okay, because I think
So-
that would be like a neighbor concern that we've heard of, as the
Yes,
parking.
and that is fair. I do understand that. We also were trying to divest of a property in Boise to basically move things around, so I apologize, but yes.
So there won't be like, big trucks with shipments coming in?
No
or
building
that kind of-
material, nothing received, nothing's shipped. It will purely be as a real estate office, kind of would be a place to meet one client at a time, or for people to come in and make an appointment. That is 100% it, so.
So I take it you're going to be remodeling the existing house somewhat, or?
The existing house, we did all the siding on the outside, and, but yeah, we have
Okay.
about a $75,000 plan to bring that up to a nice, modern look, so.
Okay, great.
So if they are just using it for an office use it's not selling real estate, but improving real estate, is there a way we could use the existing PUD?
We could not build the structure that we want with the.
Oh, you couldn't build the
PUD,
accessory
So we
unit,
would like
okay.
that to be removed because, frankly, we do not see any investment. We don't see why we would put any money into the property if we can't have a caretaker. I've had bottles thrown in while I'm in the backyard. So I would like to have somebody living there if I'm gonna put any money into the property. I'm gonna have security cameras. It's gonna look good. It's gonna be beautiful. I think it fits the density and the development plan and vision for Coeur d'Alene, especially with Trader Joe's and kind of all that happening down there. I think it'd be a great fit.
Okay, any other question around? No? Okay, if we have any other questions, we'll ask you. Thank you. I have Laura Dawson. She does wish to speak. She didn't indicate yes or no on the application. Laura, you want to come up? Laura? Hello?
Laura, is there a Laura there?
It might be out of order, so.
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because
Well,
we've
well, come
already
up
got
to,
already-
are you
Yes?
Barbara or Laura?
Barbara,
Okay, Barbara, so go ahead. You're on the list to speak.
we've already got caretakers on that street. We don't need any more. And so far, what I've seen is that property has deteriorated
You have to face
since
the
you've
mic,
been
ma'am.
there.
Ma'am, hello, miss. Face the mic because we can't.
The property has deteriorated since he's been there. The fence is broken down. I watched him break it down myself. And it has not been corrected, so the property looks terrible. So, and we already have caretakers already there. We've already got St. Vincent. And down that street on First Street, we've got all the other caretaking facilities there. We don't need another one.
I'm not.
And I'm not happy with the situation there. The parking is horrible. I've had people, I counted them, 11 people living in that house. Now, where are these caretaker facilities gonna be?
Well, let me clarify something, and I'll have the applicant come back later. I'm not sure it's a caretaker's, like an assisted living
Well,
establishment.
that's what I would like to know.
okay,
What is it?
Let me finish, please. I don't believe the intent of the caretaker's unit, and I might be wrong on this, but I'll let the applicant explain this. I don't believe that his intent is to have a assisted living place there that has a caretaker's.
Well, what is it?
Which is pretty common in an assisted living place. So we'll have the applicant, Aaron, can come back up and explain that to you, but I just wanted to clarify that. Maybe that'll help you out a little bit,
That
too.
will help out.
Okay.
But also, the parking that's been there so far has been a nightmare. The residents that are living there have nowhere to park. I live across the street, I've even had some of those people park in front of my house because there's not enough room, because there's 11 or 12 people living in that house.
Yeah,
at
and I
that
can't,
time.
we can't address that right now. Perhaps the
Well,
applicant
that's a
can.
problem for us.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and we'll let the applicant kind of explain why there might be 11 people living there right now. I'm not sure.
Well, they're not there now, but they have been in the past for quite a long time. They were
Okay.
there. I don't know where they are now.
Okay,
But this lady right here, she lives across the other street, and that parking issue affects her. Very much so, and she's gonna probably wanna come up here and talk to you about that. So, yeah, I would like to understand exactly what this is going to be there, what the business is gonna be, what they do, and how is that going to affect the rest of us in that neighborhood.
we'll let the applicant come up and
Okay.
explain that again to you.
Okay.
Thank you, appreciate it. I have a Lori Dawson? Yes, you, okay.
Hi, John. No, hi, Aaron.
And I'm sorry, I
Thank you.
didn't swear the other lady in, but do you solemnly swear and affirm that the
I cannot
testimony
hear.
you're
I'm
about
sorry.
to, do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you
I-
God.
I
Okay,
do.
go right ahead.
My name's Laura Dawson. Please call me Lori. I live at
Lori.
221 East Harrison Avenue. I've lived there since 1987, and I've seen lots of changes. My concern was something different that I thought was happening. I didn't realize there is a proposed caretaker's unit. It's been a C commercial property for a long time, different businesses, and it's had there before. I don't know what kind of needs the people are gonna have, but that was a bad situation. I wasn't prepared, but I'm deeply against having people with special needs living across the street from me, especially if they have autism or whatever, because they run out of the home and they bang on the window. They used to scare my mother and I couldn't talk to I was a prisoner in my own home. But anyway, but my concerns I wanted to have was because of the area and the growth, there's parking. This is what I was going to talk about. The parking, the garbage, the unnecessary garbage, the trash pickup that I've had to do on my side. The street sweepers don't come up and down the street because of all the cars. The drains, the drain on the corner of the northeast corner of Harrison and Second, and the drain by my house. Because of the trash and the non-sweeping, I've had to go out there and maintenance myself, and it's just ridiculous. And then there's leaf pickup that we have to worry about in the fall, and it's like, so I'm just concerned about all the extra activity, because last summer I did more, but that was great. I mean, I have, if it's the same people coming back, we got a system, nice people, Aaron's great, but I'm just concerned at how is it going to affect the neighbors? Whatever's going to be in, having a business out of there is fine, but it has affected us so much with the library being changed into the help center. There's men's shelters, women's shelters, and the saving grace for me is the Heritage Health. They help the homeless people because they were living in the street, in the alleys over by Snyder's left because they couldn't handle the homeless. Some of them are by victim, they lose their job or whatever, it's not by choice, but some choose to be that way and take drugs, and it's scary. They walk around the neighborhood in the middle of the night and they come up on your property and they steal things. So we just don't need any more in the neighborhood, and it's just, you can't make a left onto Harrison. It just needs some sort of solution in that area, like a patrol or, come stay with me. It's like, it's changed so much, and I'm not opposed to anybody bettering themselves, but I'm just concerned about what's going to happen to the neighborhood, because it just keeps getting more and more things. But the parking and okay, my time's up.
No, go ahead. All right.
Okay, any questions?
No, we'll have the applicant come up and address some of the issues and stuff.
Yeah, it's gotta be, yeah. I lived in that house. I'm gonna probably sell it and move. Or maybe rent it out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I don't have anyone else anyone else here that didn't sign up that wants to speak on this? If not, Aaron, come on up and you can address some of the issues. Ma'am, can you hear us okay while you're sitting back? Can she? Yeah, if she needs to hear a little bit, perhaps. Hold on.
Good job, Tom.
Oh, thank you.
Give us a second or two, Aaron. Does that help you, Laurie? Can you hear us? Okay, great. Sorry we didn't catch that before. All right, Aaron, go ahead. You can address what you
Sure,
heard.
just in regards to the accessory caretakers unit, just clarifying what that is. Yeah, we just want somebody to be living on the property, somebody that will be employed by us, so that it is safe and contributing to the safety of the actual neighborhood. Just want to clarify exactly what that is. We want to contribute to the safety in that area. And in regards to the parking, yeah, I mean, I do apologize. There's been cars there for sure, 5 or 6, I believe, at most. But yeah, at this time, we want to convert it from a rental to something that will have 2 cars during the day for business. If there was a third customer there, maybe a third car, and then an accessory dwelling unit person. So that is the anticipation. I believe that would solve the issues. I mean, in regards to anything else, yeah, I mean, we bought the property. We've spent quite a bit of money on architecture trying to do something with it, and you know, it's been our frustration as well that we've not been able to make the improvements and really clean it up. So we feel you. It's almost taken 2 years of working with the architect Scott Cranston downtown Coeur d'Alene. Very difficult to have had that experience, how long it took. But you know, it's just what happens sometimes when you're trying to make something better. It takes time. You know, I apologize, and I look forward to improving this property. Thank you.
All right, hold on, Aaron. Perhaps we'll have a question for you. Is it presently being the house that?
Well, it's currently unoccupied. We
Okay, it's
plan to,
unoccupied.
once this is approved, hit the gas and get everything going. If not, it'll continue to be a rental. I don't anticipate to put any money into it if I can't do that and get what we want to do.
Peter, you had a question?
Yeah, yes, I do. A couple questions. See if I understand this correctly. Currently, the property is zoned C1AL PUD, whatever that is. And that specifies the property was rezoned with specific limitations that the site layout and use be restricted to remodeling the existing house into an insurance real estate office. So that's the way the property currently sits. If you want to do anything in that property, it has to meet these requirements. Is that correct?
That's as currently.
Okay. If you want to do anything else, you have to have a zone change. And the zone change can be either C17 or C17L. You have somebody right next to you that's C17. You have somebody that's right next to you that's C17L. My feeling is that people feel more comfortable with the C17L than they do with the C17. C17L is a little bit more restrictive. Is there anything does the C17L meet your requirements?
Without reviewing them right in front of me right now, I could not tell you that. If our accessory care unit is still permitted, then I would answer yes.
All right,
So what you want specifically is an accessory care unit.
Yes, correct.
And if that falls under C17, is that not correct?
C17L, and Hillary, I'll let you
NCC,
explain what
NC as well.
C17L can or cannot do based on what the applicant is.
Well, I guess it might help to have Sean come back up as well, but it sounds like the applicant indicated this evening that he doesn't intend to have that display window space
Definitely
or
not.
retail sales.
After we were informed, well before this meeting, we had no intention, and I thought we made that clear, so I apologize that that was not presented clearly.
So, because the C-17L does allow the caretaker's apartment, and it allows service uses, including administrative professional offices. So I guess the question would be if that would work for his use without having to do that additional special use permit.
Yeah, my professional opinion is if he's using it as strictly as an office space for people to show up, open a book, similar to interior design or some other things like that, then that's more of an office space. If they're doing their books, if they're running their company somewhere else, going to the house to install the siding, it's not stored on site, no outdoor storage of goods, then to me, it's more of an office space type use.
So Aaron, if you can come back up, I'll ask you a question on basically, so your office space,
Clear.
the existing house that you're going to convert into your office space, is that what it's going to, your intention is?
100%.
Okay, and then let's call it the apartment, not a caretaker's unit, because that, I think,
That's
is
just
giving a
fine.
little confusion here.
Term-
It's going to be an apartment that you're going to rent out, or whatever you're going to do.
Correct.
So that person is living there, can police your property as well as your office
Absolutely.
space, so that hopefully the reoccurrence of things that have happened in the past won't happen again in the future.
Absolutely, and as our neighbors made clear, it's just a regular occurrence down there. I mean, you're talking, every week you've got people yelling and screaming, walking by at night,
I mean,
we slept,
Your
does-
caretakers
yeah.
can only do so much.
well, they're on the second level, so they'll be removed
Yeah,
from
I mean,
potential.
I understand, I'm trying to get what the intention is for the use of your property
Sure,
that you're
yeah,
gonna do,
amen, there we go,
so that perhaps the neighbors can be a little bit more comfortable.
for sure.
Okay.
So are you aware of the have you reviewed the C-17L? The
I mean,
bounds?
I have not. I know that NC and CC also fit my intended use before. If
You want to
access-
take a minute and go over that and see what you
So
think?
I highlighted the administrative professional offices there, the caretaker's apartment there.
It does. That would be just fine with us as well.
I know.
And we really are just really trying to take action with this. We want to get this from a PUD that we didn't understand when we purchased the property to something that we can move forward with. So that's, that would very well fit our intentions as well.
Okay, so you're aware, as long as you're aware of, if we put forward that the 17L
Yeah, it's just
You-
fine with me.
probably fit well in that category. Okay.
But, Mr., I can also point out that all your intentions are good, but tomorrow, if this is changed 17L, you can sell it tomorrow, and whatever is permitted under 17L will go on there. I mean, that's by right.
That, yeah,
So-
I mean, that's fair. That's
It's-
prop. that's
It's
the
nice
way-
for us to talk about the details, and it's nice for you to commit, but it doesn't mean that has to happen if you've made change the owners whatnot. So we have to deal with what is under 17L or 17. So you feel comfortable with C-17L? That's,
Let me ask,
It's becoming a little difficult because, the city came back to me and said, do you want to go with C-17?
They didn't offer you
I'm just
17.
trying to do, for me, it's like, I want to do something here, and both of these seem to fit. They both have the accessory caretaking unit. If this seems to fit the neighborhood's vision better, I'm for that. That's cool with, 100%, but we're trying to actively.
the difference between the C-17, it's a broad spectrum.
Sure.
C-17L, it's not as broad, but you
I'm
can
not intending to sell the property immediately. I'm not intending to maximize my value. I'm intending to use this as a professional office.
Right.
So I would leave that into you guys to say, hey, what is your best terms and if a vision of it? To be honest, it works for me either way.
Okay.
So,
Randy, let me ask you this. Since we have a application for a change from C-17 PUD to C-17, can we make a recommendation to a C-17L? How do we do this?
if the applicant is willing to do that, you are making a recommendation to city council as to the new zoning. And you can do anything as long as the applicant is willing and it's in the same ballpark.
Okay. So, because this, depending on where this goes, then it goes to city council for the final stamp.
Yeah.
And if we make a recommendation for C-17L, that recommendation goes to city council. If you're in agreement to that, and I'm hearing you are.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
absolutely.
so that goes to city council, and hopefully they'll take our recommendation, and then it'll move forward from there.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question about the caretaker's unit? It would be above the garage.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, and maybe this is a little bit to Sean or Hillary. So community commercial, you could have the caretaker's unit above the garage without a special use permit. Is that correct?
Yes, we did that for, which was the one on 4th Street, right? So we allowed it over the garage for that one.
And he
Either
could still
CC or
have his
NC.
office, and that is still the more restrictive than C-17L. It would allow both of his uses, but still be more restrictive for the neighbors.
That's correct. I believe it has a little bit more buffering.
It does have more
Environment.
buffering, and I feel like when you look at C-17L, these are not your uses, Aaron, but you get into a boarding house, group dwelling, community education, some more uses that require a significant amount of parking or like a religious use. But community commercial, which fits all of his uses that he's currently wanting, which would get his project going without a special use permit, would also limit the uses for the neighbors to really, it says retail, personal services, commercial and professional office, medical, dental, daycare, residential above the ground floor only, and a park. Which I think
You guys
is,
see all this on this?
I
we
feel
have
like
a-
that one is probably the best of the balances between the two. The neighborhood commercial could also work as well, but I feel like those meet Aaron's needs without a special use permit and also kind of fit the neighborhood maybe the best.
I agree.
And let me ask Aaron a question. Are you familiar with the community commercial?
I mean, generally speaking, I believe, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, did we not look at that before? Is that the one?
Yes. So initially, before we gave Aaron the opportunity or what do you want it to be, we sat down and looked at the future land use map, and those CC and NC are allowed under, what is it, the community, let's get back up here real quick. So it's the compact neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so that particular future land use does allow for NC and CC.
Okay.
So,
We're,
but since it was C-17 PUD, and that's the way it existed today, we said, you have a choice if you want to make those calls, but be aware, planning commission and city council make the ultimate determination.
okay, so.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that one fits the neighborhood the best. It gets him going right away, which is good for both ways, both parties, and it kind of protects the neighborhood a little more than the other uses. Probably even neighborhood commercial, because it does not allow gas station. But
Okay, Phil, go ahead.
It just seemed to be.
Oh, hold on, Phil had a question.
It's swiveling.
I don't really have a concern with the office type use. The area there along Harrison is rapidly changing, and I think a few years it may be totally changed. I would want to make sure whatever we do keeps that change to the Harrison frontage. You have St. Vincent's to you have commercial or similar to commercial across the street. At 3rd Street on Harrison, you have an office on both sides of the street, both north and south. And to the extent that you want to do the office use, I don't really see that as a problem. My concern is the zoning vehicle that we do it through. Now, I'm not big on spot zones. And all of a sudden to say we have this commercial area or this NC area is a spot zone. And I have a hard time with that. But something Peter brought up earlier, are you able, or would you even consider providing a covenant limiting the uses to office-type uses?
But I don't think we can do that with the
Under C17.
zone change of
Can't he
C-17.
volunteer it?
Randy, can you give us a little light on that? If we do a C-17, it's going to be whatever C-17 allows.
That falls under the conditional zoning, and that's not really applicable here, so, no, we can't restrict.
No, if you sell it
Right.
tomorrow, that C-17 is wide open. So, yeah.
Okay. Peter, I'm
Well,
sorry.
just, it's, you know, we went back 46 years. I'll go forward 46 years. You know, you don't have to be a weatherman to know which way the wind's blowing is. We'll come back sometime. But if you look at this, it's C-17 is, all this stuff is red. You know, it's moving that way. You know, and I understand what you're saying about, you know, smaller, but it would seem to me that the proper zoning for this is either C-17 or C-17L.
I'd like
and
to
it's consistent
continue.
with what's going on, you know?
I would like to continue with C-17L. I have considered it, and, I mean, I did not actually know that that was gonna be an option, but it just seems to me the most reasonable thing to remove the PUD, to go with an L. I mean, it just, to me, it just makes sense, but, that's what I would like to continue going with. as well.
Okay.
Would you be willing to do a neighborhood commercial?
I mean, at this point, I mean, I don't know what difference it really provides. I'd be willing to take another look, but it just, you know, we
It wouldn't prohibit any of your uses. It would just prohibit the options
You have the
that are by right, yeah.
So you wanted me to consider CC again? CC.
NC or CC, probably NC is probably the best one, because it does restrict it from being a gas station,
I don't, yeah.
which doesn't apply to you, but could be a concern of the neighbors in the future.
CC is no gas station.
Yeah.
I think you would be
It'll be
troubled to
plug-in
fit a gas
chargers.
station on that property.
You would be, I mean, but I think that just, that, you know, puts that as a
So
specifically
what am I
prohibited use.
limiting myself to?
Why don't we,
The top
well,
7
Aaron,
uses
why don't
in
we
there.
give yourself a minute?
Yeah.
So, you know, and go over both the NC and CC and see which you're most comfortable with. And I understand what Commissioner McCracken is saying, because we have it in front of us and we've looked at it. So it's not that much of a difference, but, so take your time.
No, I think we're gonna continue with a C-17L. I mean, if I was to ever sell the property, I don't think it would be in the best interest to limit a new owner to not be able to do duplexes or anything like that, given the fact that that is permitted in C-17L and not permitted in NC and CC. I mean, I can't tell you right now that, you know, someday when Coeur d'Alene, 50 years from now, becomes dense enough that that won't be a better use of that property.
Okay.
So, to me, I can't make that call, and I think that the you know, restricting property owners, you know, given, I think, what is pretty, it's a C-17 now. I mean, I'm for sure okay with limited. I mean, for me, my intended use is gonna play out for a number of years, but to limit the future owner to that, that's your guys' call. I would feel more comfortable if you have a very strong recommendation. I would proceed at that point with a CC, but unless it's clearly what you guys think is the best use, I think C-17L is the best use of the property from my analysis.
And let me ask Hillary this, on the C-17L, it has more uses, let's say duplexes and home occupation, boarding, it's a whole list of things. If someone wants to, if this goes to C-17L and this use goes in there, and then someone wants to come in and put duplex housing up there, would they have to come back for
No, that's
parking or
allowed. If they
anything?
wanted to do retail or something that's in that special use permit column, they would have to come back. for
But
a special use
otherwise,
permit.
they
Otherwise,
can
it's
do
permitted by
whatever-
right. They just have to go through the process,
Okay,
work with staff, make sure it meets all the code requirements.
okay. Okay. Any other questions for Aaron? All right, I'm gonna close public testimony on this and bring it to the commission for further discussion and a motion.
So what we have before us
Yes?
is to change it to C17L.
If that would be your motion.
But that's, yes.
We can
Well,
change it to C17L. We can change it to,
And if it is changed to 17L, the applicant agrees to that. He supports that. We are if we do C17L, we are, and the applicant and planning and zoning is consistent.
yes, the applicant mentioned he prefers C17L, but again, we can make any type of,
But that's, yes.
yeah, we don't have to
Okay.
just limit it to C17L. We can do NC, we can do CC, so. More discussion,
I
motion?
don't believe appropriate to change it other than C17L. I think we commented it's sort of spot zoning. I don't know if spot zoning's it sounds like that, but you just look what's around here, it's all C17L. But anyway,
Well, I see the C17L, gives the opportunity at least to do duplex houses, which is, in some of that area, there are some duplexes, I believe, for some of the properties that have changed. The NC really just takes away, let's say, the duplex opportunity. So.
Well, the
that's-
lot's not large enough to boost it to a juvenile offenders facility. It's not big enough to be a hospital. So the size of that lot by itself is too small to do an exploded rehabilitative facility or
Are you
religious
talking
assembly.
C17L or?
C17L goes on and extends it past what we really are seeing here is trying to let it stay and fit into the current neighborhood and try not to do damage to the adjacencies. But there are a number of civic activities that are allowed here, but that size lot, unless it buys adjacencies, has no potential to be those heavily impacting facilities. So I think C17L fits nicely currently. It doesn't harm the adjacencies and the residential size and feel of the neighborhood. And it gets away from the free-for-all of a C17. C17 is just too explosive at this point in time. It may shift in the years ahead, but I think that we're better fit for C17L rather than trying to push it into these smaller NC and CC uses. There will be code-related sidewalks demands and probably driveway demands and curb cuts and all that, but this gentleman can achieve what he wants without hurting the neighborhood too badly. I think he'll take care of the parking, which is a big issue when you've got a bunch of, I saw the street, it's got a lot of cars on it, a lot of people packing 2 and 3 and 4 cars per house. So I think that he'll also address that. And I think that the approach is light-handed. So I would say that C17L would make the sense. Anyone else?
Discussion? Motion?
I'm willing to make a motion.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. This matter having come before the Planning and Zoning Commission on February 11th, 2025 to consider ZC 1-25, a request for a zone change from C17 PUD to a C17L on a parcel measuring 0.213 acres. The applicant is Aaron Moat. The location is northwest corner of East Harrison Avenue and North 2nd Street, commonly known as 213 East Harrison Avenue. Finding of facts, the Planning and Zoning Commission finds the following facts, A1 through A15, have been established as more than probable than a not basis, as shown on the record before it. And that includes posting the notification to the public, posting it in the newspaper, notifications throughout various sites in the city. A8 surrounding 213 East Harrison Avenue is characterized by a mix of historical development and gradual transformation. The area is predominantly residential, featuring early to mid-century homes in a variety of architectural styles, including craftsman bungalows, traditional cottages, and ranch-style homes. A9, the comp plan future land use map designated as a compact neighborhood place type. And A10, according to the comp plan, the compact neighborhood place is described as places that are medium-density residential areas located primarily in older locations of Coeur d'Alene. And A11, staff has identified the following comp plan goals and objectives as being applicable to this matter. Community and identity, that's C1. The citizens are well informed. We've brought this forward in full disclosure, and we fostered and included the neighborhood in this conversation. Growth and development, this is all part of a developed mix of land uses throughout the city, and this particular area is just that. It's a mixture of commercial, residential, multifamily, duplexes, and this property fits in currently with that topography and land use. We also are looking at improving infrastructure. The owner will then comply with widening sidewalks and improving the neighborhood. A12, the applicant has indicated that if this zone change request is approved, it intends to use the property for a professional management office in the existing residential structure and build a caretaker's or an apartment unit to oversee and protect the property and get a good security system. That's what I would recommend. However, it should be noted that the zone change is approved all uses within the C17L zoning district. A3 city departments have indicated that water, wastewater, et cetera, are all provided to this area, and that sidewalks, hydrants, and stormwater will be addressed at the time of construction. A14, the subject property is approximately 9,411 square feet in size and contains a house and paved driveway off 2nd Street. It's relatively flat with minimal landscaping, and improvements will be required to meet our local codes. City engineer has indicated that I think it's barely 18 trips a day. It's not massive impact on traffic on Harrison and
Can I stop you on that? Can you change
Yes.
on A15, if that's where you're at?
A15?
To one business instead of two?
Oh, yeah, one business office and a caretaker's or, unit, ADU.
Unit, yeah.
And then finally, conclusions of law. Based on the foregoing findings of fact, the Planning and Zoning Commission makes the following conclusions of law. B1, the proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan policies. B2, public facilities and utilities are available and are adequate for the proposed use. B3, the physical characteristics of the site do make it suitable for the request. The proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood character and/or with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, or existing land uses. Finally, the Planning and Zoning Commission, pursuant to the foregoing findings of fact and conclusion of law, has determined that the requested zone change does comply with the required evaluation criteria and recommends that the City Council does adopt this property under the C17L zoning.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
I have
Comment on the
discussion?
motion.
Yeah.
I still kind of feel like the neighborhood commercial is a better fit. I feel like even though the lot's small, it's not maybe gonna be a lot of these uses. The outside, an accessory use to C17L would be the outside storage of goods when related to the principal use. And that little block on Harrison between Government and 4th, I mean, you can't take a left off 2nd most of the time of day anyway. And so I just feel like some of these uses aren't really compatible with the heavier activities that may require lots of deliveries and that kind of thing. It pushes all of that to the residential streets on the side. So I would still prefer the neighborhood commercial because I think it still achieves Aaron's goals, but then protects the neighborhood. That would be my take on it, just because of that small section between the two, especially with the elementary school on that street. It's just certain times of day that is already a very congested block.
Okay. Further discussion before I have roll call? All right, can I have roll call, please?
Fleming,
Yes.
McCracken,
No.
Lutrip,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Messina.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. Congratulations. Good luck to you. If I have a motion to adjourn?
Oh, we have another thing on our
Anything
agenda.
I have
Oh,
the
hold on.
presentation for you.
Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to go home.
His brain's gone,
Sorry. Other business. Been so long since we had
went
a
longer
meeting.
than you thought it would go.
Great. I mean, if you want to postpone this, we can do that. Commissioner Fleming had suggested, since we only had the one item tonight, that this would be a good opportunity.
Didn't think we'd
this
go
meeting
this long, but
to give you an update on some of the things that staff has been working on with our working group
yeah.
related to the downtown core and infill. And also, I'm going to give you an update on our Historic Preservation Commission. So with that, I'll start with the downtown core infill working group update. You are very familiar, so this is for you, also for the public. City Council had asked us, based on a lot of feedback from community members, to evaluate our zoning code and our design guidelines related to what's allowed in the downtown core and the infill areas surrounding the downtown. And so we started work on that, and I'll kind of walk through what we've been doing so far. So some of the guidance they gave us initially was to incorporate a historic preservation perspective to evaluate the development potential of downtown. So looking at what's allowed in our current code and what that could look like if we built out under the current code. Also looking at impacts of the current code on infrastructure and traffic, and looking at possible alternatives to height and FAR, which is floor area ratio. So currently you can go up to 220 feet tall in the downtown if you can meet all the floor area ratio bonuses. And so we've been receiving some community feedback that maybe that's too tall and that might be taking away from the character of the downtown and potentially could contribute to a loss of some of the historic characteristics of the downtown. Also evaluating what's allowed currently with the floor area ratio bonuses and looking at other communities to see how they are addressing these same issues and what guidelines and standards they put into place. And then, of course, a big component as we get further along will be making sure we're engaging the stakeholders, so the property owners, the businesses, those that are downtown, as well as the rest of the community, and getting input from them and doing communication. So here is a list of our working group members. So 2 of our planning and zoning commissioners are on the working group, so thank you to John and Lynn. And then John also is representing DRC. He's on our Design Review Commission. And we have Jeff Lemon on there as well. We have 3 Historic Preservation Commission members. That commission is 9 members, so we were able to pull in 3 and not have to worry about kind of quorum or having too many people. So those members are on there, our chair and our vice chair. So Walter Burns is the chair, Annalisa Miller is the vice chair, and then Shannon Sardell. We have Emily Boyd from the Downtown Association, and then we have design professionals assisting us, Kevin Jester and John Mueller. Our city council liaison is Dan Gukin, and then we have staff from planning, building, streets and engineering, and then we're going to loop in fire and police and our utilities as needed. So here is the downtown core boundaries. So the bigger boundary here, kind of the dashed line, is the downtown core, and then this area with this fuchsia coloring is the area that's mandatory review of the Design Review Commission. So the areas outside of that, it would just be a staff review of any proposals that come through. And then the infill areas that we're talking about with this working group are the downtown north and the downtown overlay east. The midtown overlay we're not looking at this time. And so here's kind of a close-up of the downtown north. It's a little tricky because there's underlying zoning, and so you have to look at both the existing zoning and then the overlay, and then there's the downtown core that overlaps some of it. So we've talked about maybe separating that out, making it easier to administer. And then here is the downtown overlay east boundary. Again, there's a variety of zoning districts that are within that. So far we've had 12 meetings with the working group. We've been trying to have 2 meetings a month. We've had a few months we couldn't achieve that, but we've been working hard to kind of go through a lot of material and evaluate the code and look at other communities and come up with some recommendations. So we're still working through the process. Our first meeting was last May, and then we did a check-in with City Council in July. And here is the feedback that council gave us. They said, we like where you're going. We definitely do want you to consider the view corridors and the towers. They did like preserving kind of a historic core that would have limited heights. and then having some historic characteristics on the main street. So looking at how the design guidelines would interplay with that. Addressing parking, kind of our current parking standards and the fee in lieu of option that you could pay a fee instead of providing parking. They wanted us to definitely look at the FAR bonuses to see which ones could be removed, and then if other ones should be added. They asked us to also look at, should we make Sherman Avenue and Lakeside into one-way streets? This was evaluated a number of years ago, but this is something that they've asked us to look at again. They want us to incorporate public safety, so work closely with police and fire as we get further along. And then they liked the idea of us doing modeling, so kind of evaluating the development potential using software and also working with University of Idaho's architecture program to do some cost savings. So that was their feedback. So efforts to date, we have reviewed our existing code, our existing design guidelines, as well as there's a number of historic documents that have been done. There's been economic development studies done for the city, for the downtown, so looking at those. We have outlined some desired scenarios to model, so kind of what could be full build out under the current conditions, and then looking at some varying changes to height and kind of FAR, things like that. We've had conversations with University of Idaho's architecture professor about getting some of their graduate students to help us with modeling and also helping us with imagery for design guidelines. And then we have met with Ali Marino from Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization about traffic modeling based on the scenarios. We have looked at the development standards. We've spent quite a bit of time on that and looked at the FAR bonuses. And we have looked at our design guidelines as well as other communities, and I'll show you an example of that. And then as I mentioned, for those overlay districts, we've discussed it might be a lot easier for everyone if we just created separate zoning districts instead of having 3 different zoning districts with an overlay on top of it and trying to figure out how that works with the code consistency. And then we also looked at outdoor lighting considerations at our last meeting. So we've been busy. So one of the other things that Sean and Mike Beharry have been doing is we've been working on trying to do a base model and create what we call a digital twin. So it's working with Esri software, which is, you're familiar with our GIS map. We can see a lot of, you can look on our map on the city's website and see the zoning layers and parcel information. Well, there's all this technology available now where you can actually create basically what looks like here 3D modeling. And you can build it up and you can do it based on existing plans. You can turn around, you can look at shadows, you can look at sight lines, you can look at all these different things. So they've been looking at some different scenarios. And so this image here, and I'll show you a few more, is kind of what exists now as well as what's under construction currently. So we have the Sherman Tower for the resort, we have the Thomas George here, and then the Marriott is here. So that shows those 3. Here's the same thing, just kind of a turned view. So we're kind of looking this way is east. Here's another one, looking more directly east. This is Sherman Avenue here, and this would be that Sherman Tower for the resort. And this would be the Marriott. And then a couple of other fun scenarios just to kind of look at. We're going to discuss this more tomorrow with the working group. But, you know, looking at, what if we added some 110-foot towers on Front Avenue? What does that look? Kind of the massing and the shadow lines and all of that. And here's somewhere, what if we, under the current code, or even if it intensified, could you get even taller than the 220 feet, what that looks like? So where towers could be placed, kind of just theoretically, and what that looks like. And here's another image of that. So just thought it'd be fun for you to see some of the behind the scenes. With Mike's retiring, we're gonna be needing to lean more on University of Idaho for having them help with this, because this is a big lift to learn the software and to do the modeling and analysis. We have been looking, as I mentioned, at other communities' design guidelines, and one of the ones we really liked is Kalispell. They have done a nice job of addressing historic preservation, but allowing modern architecture to be built. So they're not trying to create a false sense of history, but allowing things that are compatible, so you can kind of see the scale and the size and some of the design elements really fit well with the historic architecture, but it is modern design. And so looking at what they've done to incorporate that in terms of language and imagery. So we have a lot still to do. So here's kind of a list of our next steps. So mentioned previously, we want to look at what are those boundaries and how do we address the infill areas, looking at the parking. In addition to parking ratios and the fee in lieu of, we've talked about too, there's some developers that have done parking that they're required to do, but then they turn around and lease it out or charge more for their renters. And so should that be something that gets addressed as well with the code? Because if they charge more, then they park on the street or have to get parking permits elsewhere if it's cheaper. So that's one of the things, we need to do some additional modeling to really truly come up with those scenarios. And then once we have those scenarios, figure out what does that look like for use types, the square footage, and then run that through the traffic modeling and run that through for impacts on utilities and traffic.
When they pay fee in lieu of parking, how can they pay fee in lieu of all parking?
They can.
How low can they?
We've had very few
Okay.
developers that have taken advantage of the cost of it is, and we probably need to look at what the actual cost of fee in lieu of should be nowadays. I mean, our fees are
Right.
based on 15 years ago or more for the fee in lieu of, but it's very expensive to do that.
Okay.
Also, let's see, I already mentioned, want to make sure we look at the allowable heights and that looking at the one-way roads and what the impacts would be to traffic for that, making sure we get input from public safety, stakeholders, and then once we have all that, kind of put it together in a draft, get more input from the public and others, and then bring that to this commission and then to city council for consideration of both the development standards and the design guidelines. We've also talked about it'd be great to have some of the University of Idaho students to actually package up the design guidelines, because that was something that previously we had Mark Hinshaw and his company, they put that together for us and found the images, and we thought that would be a nice student project. So with that, I'd stand for any questions.
I got a quick question.
Sure.
On the FARs, Hillary, or, because I know presently what we have.
Right.
What kind of input were you getting to say, like, what can you increase the FARs, or what are you going to give us if you want more FARs? I mean, what was kind of the discussion on that? And then also expanding the area for the design review.
Right.
Besides what we have right now, and or maybe, I don't know if the discussion was to lower the square footage of some buildings, because I think there are some that if it's over a larger square footage, yes, it'll go to the design review. If there's been any discussion on square footage changing for design review based on buildings and stuff.
I'll answer that one first. So
Okay, go
We have
ahead.
not addressed that yet, so that's very preliminary kind of discussion, but that would be something that would make sense, because you're right, if it's a very small thing, maybe it doesn't need to come for commission review and it could just be staff, so we'll look at that. But that would be, yeah, very good input we would want from this commission and from the working group. The other one on the floor area ratio, so currently there's things that are, you can get a bonus if you have recreation space, so if you're provide a gym within a facility that's only for people that live in that building, that can be a bonus. So there's just some things that it's like, do we really need that? There's water features, there's some other things that we thought, does that make sense? And council said we don't want those as bonuses. But other ones we talked about that would be really important would be workforce housing. How do you incentivize that? No one has ever taken advantage of it. It's currently in the code. But how do you, so you have to make it a bigger bonus, and how do you, trying to figure out realistically, what does that look like to achieve that? So it's really kind of just a overhaul of the FAR bonuses and looking at other communities to see what they've done. But we've allowed some kind of neat ones, like even public restroom would be a new option, even like an indoor public space. So some communities have like a really neat kind of atrium space that's open to the public. So it could be year-round space where you can kind of go in there and, get out of the weather. So there's some different ones
see.
we're looking at
Okay.
incorporating.
And then if you get rid of the overlay, you'd get rid of both overlays and then just have a downtown zone. Likely, is
We've
that-
talked about doing, so the downtown core zone, and then possibly instead of the downtown north, that would just be maybe like north, or I don't know, downtown north zone or whatever it would be, and then downtown east maybe. We aren't into that yet, but we just talked about, it'd be nice to simplify it because it has been a
it's similar
challenge.
to the application today, where if you have these little PUDs, that was a random one, or like overlays for someone purchasing the property, it's very clear what the restrictions are on it. When you went to one of the, I think it was the last of the little map slides, it looks like right by the entrance to the city hall parking lot, is like one little part, that little
Right,
parcel,
yes.
the little two parcels at the bottom?
Yes.
Is there a reason why those are separate?
The property owner, I believe it was this one, kept asking city council to include that in the downtown east.
But they're
And then
all in
this
downtown
one
east, even that one's.
Is our new museum site, right, where the White House has been relocated, so.
Oh, okay.
That's that property. But so this one is kind of an unusual boundary, so yes, even looking at, okay, do these
Making them make more sense. Yeah.
would be nice. And then we talked about too, with the downtown east, should that also include kind of the East Sherman area that we've discussed? So that then, becomes bigger. It's a bigger task, but those are some of the things we've
Okay.
discussed as well. You're welcome.
Go ahead, Peter.
Mr. Chair, I think that this committee that Hillary's on, is working on this, is excellent. And to me, it's, what was going on is similar to how Atlas was started. Different, it was similar. Atlas wanted waterfront. And we wanted to do something to have waterfront for the public. And the city went through a process, a rather elaborate one, and it resulted in open waterfront for the city and buildings. In this one, the city has a desire to keep our downtown area in a certain form, in a certain fashion, in a certain way. And we understand property rights and so forth, but still we were going ahead to try to see what we can do to keep Coeur d'Alene like Coeur d'Alene. And your group that you're working with, that's working on this, is going to be a lot of work, a lot more, but it's well taken, and you're to be complimented on taking a task like this on, because it will be 2 meetings a month. It may be a lot, but what you're going to accomplish, it's a small investment. You're to be congratulated. Look forward to seeing the next report.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I'll go on to the Historic Preservation Commission efforts, if I may.
Yeah.
Oh, I think.
Were there other questions? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Phil, go
Sure.
ahead. Yeah.
Hillary, just out of curiosity, I mean, I know everyone complains about height, and they think 20-story buildings, these are horrible, we got to abolish them. Not my game, but that's another story. But is there anyone looking at the height of the apartments around town, with them to 4 stories? If they were 5, they'd have to be sprinkled, which makes more cost, but may also generate more construction and more buyers and actually bring prices down somewhat. But I just think, it's either 4 or 22 is just kind of a dichotomy that doesn't really work very well, I hope.
We have not yet looked at the zoning outside of kind of the downtown area to determine that. That would be something that could be discussed with this commission in the future. So currently, if you're doing multifamily, you'd be 45 feet tall, would be kind of your general one, unless you do the R34 density increase to get to 63 feet tall.
Thank you.
So that would be kind of the, unless you have a mixed-use commercial building where commercial is more than 51%, then can be unlimited, but that's not. We haven't seen that happen. But you're right, that could be something to look at to incentivize additional development. Okay, I will talk about the Historic Preservation Commission efforts briefly. So as you're aware, that commission was formed in 2019 with a goal of preserving our historic buildings and neighborhoods. And there are a number of duties. I won't say them all, they're listed on the screen, but these are from our code. But I put in bold the ones that really are relevant, that they've been very active in terms of designating or recommending designation of historic properties and historic districts, and then making recommendations in the planning processes undertaken by the city, recommending ordinances and actions. They have recently, we've been working on a demolition review process so they can enter properties and take photos for documentation, and then also taking public comment and testimony on issues of historic importance. Here is a list of our commission members. And in addition, we have a city council liaison, so Kiki Miller is our liaison. Key accomplishments, so not only we were kind of formed quickly, we became a certified local government and had our ordinance all in 2019, and then we quickly thereafter, we received grant funds and we worked on a historic preservation plan that was adopted by city council in 2021. The commission itself wasn't directly involved in the Hamilton House preservation and getting that listed in the National Register of Historic Places, but they were instrumental in helping kind of provide that support and doing a review of that nomination that would go toward the State Historic Preservation Office and then to the National Park Service for final listing. Last year was the first year we started celebrating May as Preservation Month, so that's kind of a national event, and so we'll be doing that again this year. And we started a Heart of History Award program 2 years ago, and so last year that was rolled into the Preservation Month celebration. And then currently, we are finishing up the Garden District nomination to the National Register of Historic Places. That is very soon going to be going from the State Historic Preservation Office to National Park Service, and we hope to get it listed early this year. The commission was also involved and worked closely with staff on efforts and community activists on helping preserve the Roosevelt Inn. And so worked closely with Randy Adams on coming up with a facade easement to help preserve the exterior of the structure and require that the new owners would preserve that. Then also worked with the commission and staff to bring forward a temporary moratorium to City Council, so that was adopted. That expired in December. And then we've had some recent success with doing some salvaging. So you guys saw some photos, I believe, and there were some in the paper, and Commissioner Fleming wrote a little my turn in there about that. So these are the vault doors from the Johnston building, which was a bank building built in 1905. And they are pretty impressive doors. So they have both been salvaged. Yeah, they are gorgeous, so. We also have a new demolition review process, so we've had our first meeting with an applicant and trying to provide input. We'd like to have the discussion with them to say, is it possible to preserve the structure? And if not, would you consider some input on the new structure? So they're not gonna say, no, you can't demolish it, but they'd like to offer some input on how the new structures could be more compatible with the historic character of the neighborhoods.
And Hillary, on that, is that more of just a discussion, recommendation? Because I believe I read in the paper or heard that, you know, the person who was going to change that building just said, thanks, but I'll
Right.
consider it, but you really don't have to do anything.
That's correct. On that particular case, as far as we have not received any requests to do a variance. That was a recommendation of the commission to the applicant to consider doing a variance to reduce the side yard setback to allow the garage and the driveway to access off the side street to make it fit more with the neighborhood. And I think based on timing and cost process, the applicant decided not to at least pursue it for applying this month. So I don't know if it's going to happen, but at this
Right.
point, it seems
Are they the
unlikely.
Historic Commission looking or the discussions to say, all right, put a little more teeth into something like that? How can you have someone without taking their rights away say, well, yeah, we'll let you demo, but we want to see this instead of that?
The commission at this point is just kind of evaluating the process and trying to figure out, how to improve it. And then if that is a desire, definitely have to go to city council and get their
Okay.
blessing. They'd have to change the code to
Yeah.
have it be that way. At this point, it's just a recommendation. They get to review the ones that they select to say if it was built prior to 1960 and it is of historic significance, we want to review it as a commission. And then before they can demo it, we have the meeting, and then also there's an opportunity to enter the property, take photos, and recommend salvaging of important items. So, but it's just a recommendation at this point.
Right. And is there anything would the Historic Commission have anything to do with the new, perhaps, overlays downtown on Sherman since?
Yes,
what
so
is it,
that's-
1960?
So 3 of them are on that working group for that very reason, to make sure
Oh,
that we
okay.
have that interface and getting their input on that.
Okay, great.
Yep.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No problem. And then another one, we recently had just a very small stakeholder meeting with some property owners along the Government Way corridor, because that's been identified as an area that has a lot of historic integrity, and the neighbors are really cohesive and have done some things in the past to protect the trees along the median. And so kind of visiting with them and getting their input on, what are things they'd like to preserve and what changes concern them in the neighborhood, to see if they might want to do something related to historic preservation. So,
Can I ask you another question real
of
quick?
course.
Given what you just said, like Government Way and some of those historic-looking type of existing homes and new homes going in there, which we've seen that they don't match too well. They're nice houses, but they're not. Would the further discussion on the design review guidelines expand to any of those areas that the Historic Preservation Commission is looking at to say, hey, here's some design guidelines?
We have discussed, so there's some different options. So city council, when we brought forward the historic preservation plan and they adopted that, it has some language in there to look at the option of doing historic overlay zones. And within that, we anticipated it might be similar to an opt-in where the neighbors would say, we want to have this designation, and it might have certain design criteria. Not super specific, not saying what color, exactly what, finials or things like that, but just, are there certain things that they might want to consider? So, if there's an alley, use the alley for that. Maybe the accessory dwelling unit has to look like the primary home. Certain things like that are basically, we're going to be asking some of the neighborhoods, do they want to do that or not? So at this point, it's really up for discussion. I don't anticipate it would become something that would be a design review commission item, but it might be something that would be in the future, either something if they opt in and it gets that designation, either staff would review or maybe historic preservation commission. But the commission really wants a light touch, but wants maximum effect, right? So it's this whole balancing act. Like, we want to protect property rights, but we also want to make sure that all of the neighborhoods don't change so significantly people don't recognize Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah,
I have a question kind of related to that on the garden district. So their application, and you can maybe clarify because I don't know if I have all the details right, but then there's a boundary that was submitted with that application and it's not approved yet.
Correct.
But there are contributing homes and not contributing homes. And so the contributing homes are pre-1960, is that right?
So it's 50 years or older. So for the demolition review, we chose prior to 1960, just so we'd kind of limit. But for historic preservation for the National Register, it's 50 years or older is historic.
Is a contributing home. So
So there's a couple different parts. So
yeah.
So yes, it has to meet kind of that age, but also it has to be a certain architectural style that's representative of Coeur d'Alene's history and hasn't been significantly modified over time. So there's different ways that we bring in an expert that helps us do this analysis, and they kind of identify. So there might be a home that was built in 1940, but it has been covered and has this huge addition, and so now it's non-contributing because it looks nothing like it did when it was built. So it's not really helping contribute to the historic character of the neighborhood.
So in that application, my understanding is the amount of contributing homes is like the low 50s, like low 50%?
So it's kind of confusing. So the total number is over 60% are contributing.
Okay.
In order to be a historic district, you need to be 51% or more for the National Register. The National Park Service added within the last year that you have to evaluate outbuildings as well. And so when you average those, it brought it into the 50 percentile for contributing. And so that makes it really tricky because there's a lot of outbuildings that, even if they were built in the 1920s, are not contributing because they're dilapidated. So it becomes kind of a weird math.
So I guess for the example, the one that went before the Historic Preservation Commission was one home on a double lot.
Correct.
And so that one home was contributing.
It was.
And it's going to be torn down and have two homes that are non-contributing.
That's correct.
So if we're already really close to that buffer, I guess, is there some urgency in having an overlay to protect that before we get into the not qualifying, I guess, numbers on that?
That's a good question.
Because I guess that's a concern, like when they're getting torn down to build two non-contributing homes, and we're already really close to that percentage. So I guess I would just encourage, some movement on that before I know it was really close. I was kind of surprised how close we were to that not qualifying number.
Great question.
Phil, go ahead.
Yes.
Hillary, as I understand it, if the house was built before 1960, it is considered to be potentially historic. I just have to say, do you have any idea how disconcerting this is for me, knowing my age?
We've all had those conversations because it's actually 50 years or older for the other. Yeah. So we also are working with a consultant, and tomorrow will be a kickoff meeting for a downtown reconnaissance level survey, which is evaluating all of the structures in the downtown area. And this will be great. It'll really interface well with the work we're doing with a working group to understand what exists now. The characteristics of the buildings, the heights, massing, all those different things, and then the age and the architecture and all of that. So that's exciting work. Here's the boundary of that
survey area. And then for Preservation Month, there's already work and discussion underway about what to do this May. So we'll continue with the momentum we've been building and do another reception, do the Heart of History Awards. If Garden District gets officially listed, we're hoping it'll be before May, so that can be celebrated with some tours and an event, and then doing some additional outreach, and then working with Museum of North Idaho and the Kootenai County's Historic Preservation Commission. And then this is kind of the last slide. So as noted, the HPC, we've had representatives working on that downtown core and infill working group to make sure we have that communication. And then we are discussing the historic overlay district. And then also, are there other changes to the zoning code without doing an overlay that maybe we should be looking at? You know, we're starting to see some, maybe not some so compatible development in our residential areas. There's the shop houses and some other things that wouldn't really fit in a historic district, and lot coverage and massing and some other things that might be worthy of looking at separate from an overlay district. So with kind of all that in mind, we have had a request from our Historic Preservation Commission to do a joint workshop with the Planning and Zoning Commission in March to really start kind of talking about those things. And so we'll be working with your schedules and theirs and get something on the books.
Great.
With that, stand for questions.
Any questions for Hillary? Before we let her go home?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Hillary. That was great. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, now I can have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion, I have a first, and I have a
Lynn,
second.
second.
All in favor?
A quick discussion.
Oh, no.
Thank you. No.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Did you call?